It was just past midnight when the alarm on my panel lit up, silent, red, precise. Not loud enough to wake anyone. Loud enough to tell me a boundary had been crossed. I didn't move. I watched the hallway camera feed from the monitor beside me. The front door opened. No force. No hesitation. Ethan stepped in first. He didn't look around. Didn't check if anyone was home. He walked in like it was already his. 2 men followed him. Quiet. Focused. One of them carried a folder. Lily wasn't with them. That told me enough. They moved past the kitchen. Straight to my study. No voices. No confusion. They knew exactly where they were going. Ethan opened the door with his key. I am 69 years old. I live alone in a house my wife and I paid off 22 years ago. The accounts are balanced every Sunday. The files are labeled. The routines don't change. Nothing in my life required intervention. That was my position. Lily disagreed. At first, quietly. She started coming on Thursdays instead of Sundays. Said it was easier. Brought groceries I didn't ask for. Rearranged things in the kitchen. I corrected it the next morning. Then Ethan started coming with her. He didn't wait for a problem. He arrived with solutions. Let me handle some of the paperwork, he said one evening, already holding a folder. Just to make things easier. I told him I didn't need help. He nodded. Then he stepped inside anyway. After that, things moved faster. Mail started arriving opened. Not all of it. Just enough to notice. Statements already sorted. Ethan mentioning them before I had read them. Nothing urgent, he'd say. I took a look. He installed cameras a week later. For security, Lily said. You're alone. I asked for access. Ethan smiled. Of course. He never gave it. Then the conversations changed. At the pharmacy, he answered for me. At the bank, he spoke first. People looked at him. Then adjusted how they spoke to me. I let it pass. Once. Then twice. Then I started listening to the words. Memory. Stress. If something happens to you. Always careful. Never direct. Lily repeated it at dinner. Dad, you've been under a lot of stress. I hadn't. But she believed it when she said it. That mattered. I didn't argue. I observed. I didn't change anything on the surface. Same routines. Same tone. Same answers. But I stopped assuming neutrality. Because nothing they did was random. Nothing was late. Nothing was uncertain. Everything came early. Solutions before problems. Access before permission. And standing in my own kitchen, listening to Ethan explain my own finances back to me. I understood what was forming. Nothing was wrong. But nothing was neutral anymore. The first inconsistency was small. Easy to ignore. Ethan started collecting my mail before I did. Not occasionally. Consistently. Late morning. Before I finished breakfast. The envelopes were already opened. Stacked. Aligned. Nothing important, he said. I filtered it. Filtered. I stopped commenting. I started checking the dates. The second was the cameras. 3 of them. Front door. Hallway. Living room. Clean installation. Professional work. He explained the angles like it was a project already completed. I asked for access again. Still setting it up, he said. A week later, he referenced footage. You didn't leave the house yesterday. I hadn't told him that. Which meant he had access. And I didn't. The third was the conversations. At the bank, a clerk addressed him. Not me. Mr. Ethan already explained the situation. I hadn't explained anything. I looked at him. He nodded. Calm. Controlled. Just routine clarification, he said. Clarification of what wasn't clear. That's when I started writing things down. Dates. Phrases. Timing. No confrontation. No correction. Just records. The fourth came 3 days later. I was on the phone with my insurance provider when Ethan walked in. No knock. He stood in the doorway. Listening. Not hiding. Not asking. When I ended the call, he said. You should update your emergency contact. I already have, I replied. He smiled. Yes. But we should formalize it. We. That word appeared too often. That evening, Lily used it too. If something happens to you, Dad, we need to be prepared. Not if something happens. If something happens to me. I didn't respond. I waited. The call came the next morning. From my bank. Head office. The voice was careful. Mr. Mark, we need to confirm your account representation. I don't have one, I said. A pause. According to our system, you've been listed with an authorized representative. I didn't speak. Who is listed? I asked. Ethan, she said. Full authorization pending. Pending. Which meant something had already been submitted. Already entered. Without me. I ended the call and went to my study. The drawer wasn't open. It wasn't broken. Just, slightly misaligned. Inside, the folders had been touched. Not rearranged. Not taken. Reviewed. I stood there for a long moment. Because the pattern had changed. Before, it was behavior. Now, it was documentation. Before, it was presence. Now, it was position. His name was already inside the system. This wasn't help. This was positioning. I stayed in the dark, listening. Drawers opening. Paper shifting. Low, controlled voices. Not searching. Processing. He had done this before. And sitting there, watching my own house through a screen, I understood something clearly. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't concern. This was access. People don't start with theft. They start with permission. Then they stop asking. He didn't knock. He didn't ask. He already had access. I didn't confront anyone. I went to the bank. In person. Mid-morning, different staff. I asked for a full audit trail. Access requests. Authorization attempts. Document submissions. The clerk hesitated. Then printed. The first entry was 2 weeks old. Representation documentation. Submitted. Not approved. Not rejected. Just, sitting inside the system. Source? I asked. She turned the screen slightly away. External advisor interface. Advisor. Ethan never mentioned that. I thanked her and left. Outside, in my car, I wrote it down. Mail. Cameras. Bank. Order matters. At home, I checked the network. Not the cameras. The router. He hadn't asked for that access. 3 remote logins. Same admin profile. Not mine. I followed the timestamps. Late night. Early morning. Midday. Regular intervals. Not random. Scheduled. I disconnected the system from the network. Didn't power it down. No alert. No message. That told me something else. I wasn't supposed to have access. Next, documents. I didn't look for missing files. I looked for disturbance. Paper shifts. Edges misalign. Pressure leaves patterns. 3 folders had been opened. Property deed. Insurance policy. Medical records. Assets. Liability. Capacity. I sat down. Compared dates. Then I made a call. An old colleague. Compliance. Quiet. Accurate. What's the minimum to initiate guardianship? I asked. A pause. Pattern of concern, he said. Financial oversight request. Supporting documentation. Usually from family. Family. What counts as documentation? I asked. Behavioral notes. Observations. Medical indicators. I ended the call. Looked at my notes again. Mail access confusion. Camera control safety. Bank request assistance. Individually, nothing. Together. Structure. I checked one more thing. My medical provider. Access logs. 2 entries. Family inquiry. No updates. No changes. Just access. Collection. I leaned back. Closed the file. They weren't proving anything. They were building everything. Every action was placed ahead of an argument. A version of me. That needed supervision. That required control. And the system. Bank, medical, legal. Was already being introduced to that version. Before I said a word. I hadn't objected. I hadn't reacted. Which meant. On paper. I had agreed. I stood up. Walked into the hallway. Looked at the camera. Still recording. Just not for me. That's when it became clear. This wasn't speed. It was inevitability. Quiet. Documented. Supported. I wasn't being pushed. I was being replaced. And the system was already moving. Without me. I didn't need more confirmation. The structure was already there. Ethan wasn't improvising. He was documenting. And Lily was repeating it. That mattered more than anything else. I took 3 folders from the cabinet. Property. Accounts. Medical. I placed them on the desk. Opened each one. Not searching. Verifying. Nothing was missing. Everything had been touched. Edges misaligned. Tabs slightly bent. Pages not sitting where they should. They weren't taking. They were preparing. I closed the folders. Sat still for a moment. Then I stood up. Waiting would finish their work. I went to the hallway cabinet. Removed every spare key. Front door. Side entrance. Garage. Placed them in an envelope. Sealed it. Next, the cameras. I didn't check them. I shut them down. Completely. No signal. No access. No visibility. Silence. My phone buzzed. Ethan. System offline? I didn't answer. I opened my contacts. Scrolled once. Stopped. Independent counsel. Not family. Not connected. Not influenced. I called. I need an appointment today. A pause. Then. Yes. I ended the call. Then I did something I hadn't done before. I stopped observing. I opened a new notebook. Not notes. Records. Dates. Actions. Names. Systems. No interpretation. Only sequence. Everything placed in order. Not to understand. To use. By the time I left the house, the process had already changed. I wasn't inside it anymore. I had stepped outside. And from the outside, it looked different. Clear. Linear. Predictable. Which meant something simple. If I waited, they would win quietly. So I didn't wait. I moved first. I didn't rush the process. I replaced the locks the next morning. Not dramatically. Same brand. Same model. Different cylinders. Installed by a licensed contractor with an invoice and timestamp. I changed my account access in person. New credentials. New verification path. No shared devices. The bank flagged the pending authorization request and froze it before completion. I didn't cancel it. I preserved it. My lawyer advised that clearly. Let them continue, he said. It shows intent. So I allowed the structure to remain visible. I scheduled a full medical evaluation with a physician who had never met me. Cognitive testing. Written report. Signed and dated. No ambiguity. Above average for your age, he said. I filed that too. Then I requested full access logs from every system Ethan had touched. Bank. Insurance. Medical. Each request submitted formally. Each response documented. 3 days later, Ethan tried to enter the house. He used his key. It didn't work. He tried again. Slower this time. Then he called. Mark, the lock isn't turning. I changed it, I said. A pause. Why would you do that? For accuracy, I replied. Access should reflect ownership. He didn't argue. Not yet. That came later. 2 days later, I received notice. A preliminary filing. Not full guardianship, but intent. Concern. Review. Submitted by Ethan. Supported by a statement from Lily. I didn't react. I forwarded it to my lawyer. The hearing was scheduled quickly. That was expected. These things rely on momentum. Ethan believed he had it. The room was small. Administrative, not theatrical. A clerk, a reviewing officer, 2 chairs on each side. Ethan arrived early. Lily sat beside him. Quiet. Tense. He had a folder. Organized. Confident. He nodded at me when I entered, like this was procedural. Like I was already inside his structure. The officer began with him. State your concern. Ethan stood. Measured tone. Controlled pace. Recent memory lapses. Financial confusion. Increased isolation. We're requesting temporary oversight to ensure his safety. He referenced the mail. The cameras. The missed details. Each point carefully framed. Each one something I had allowed to pass. Lily spoke next. Soft voice. He's not the same lately. She didn't look at me when she said it. Then it was my turn. I didn't stand immediately. I placed a single folder on the table and opened it. Access logs, I said. I slid the first document forward. Bank submission initiated without my authorization. Time-stamped. The officer looked down. Ethan didn't move. I placed the second. Remote camera access. External logins. Not assigned to me. A shift in posture. Small, but visible. The third. Medical inquiry access. 2 entries. No consent. The officer looked at Ethan. For what purpose were these accessed? Ethan opened his mouth, then stopped. I continued. Cognitive evaluation. Independent. Completed 3 days prior. I placed the report on top. Findings are clear. The officer read the first line. Then the signature. Silence settled in the room. Not confusion. Not delay. Recognition. Ethan tried to speak again. This is being misinterpreted. I slid one final document forward. The initial authorization request, I said. Incomplete. Submitted before any documented concern. That was the sequence. That was the mistake. He tried to prove I was unstable. But he left evidence everywhere. The officer closed the folder slowly. Lily finally looked at me. Not with doubt. With realization. The direction had reversed. Completely. That will be all, the officer said. No raised voice. No argument. Just conclusion. Ethan sat down without finishing his sentence. His structure had collapsed under its own order. And for the first time since this began, no one in the room was speaking. Not because there was nothing to say. But because everything had already been shown. The filing was dismissed within the week. Not delayed. Not reconsidered. Closed. The bank removed the authorization request and flagged Ethan's submission for internal review. My accounts were locked to single-party control. No external representation permitted without in-person verification. The camera system was replaced entirely. New provider. New access. Only mine. My medical records were sealed with restricted inquiry permissions. Any future access required direct confirmation. Ethan sent 2 messages after the hearing. I didn't respond. Lily came once. Stood at the door. No key this time. No entry. We spoke for less than a minute. She asked if we could fix this. I told her there was nothing to fix. Access had been the issue. That was already resolved. They didn't try again. The house returned to its original condition. Quiet. Controlled. Documented. Nothing missing. Nothing shared. They didn't try to take my house. They tried to take control. And they almost did. Have you ever trusted someone, and realized too late what they were really doing? Tell me in the comments.